My name is Charlotte Wilson. I'm 52 years old, and I found out from a colleague in the break room that half my company thinks I slept my way to vice president. It was in the newsletter 3 weeks ago," Jessica said quietly, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her mouth. "The rumor, HR's been investigating. 3 weeks. I'd been walking around my own company for 3 weeks while people whispered about me in hallways and elevators and conference rooms. What exactly does the rumor say?" Jessica looked at her shoes. "That you and Mark, that the promotion wasn't based on merit? Mark Sullivan, my boss, 56 years old, married for 30 years, father of 3, the man who promoted me based on 15 years of documented work and a track record of campaigns that increased revenue by 40%. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked the question that mattered. Where did it start? HR traced it. Someone at a book club mentioned hearing it from... Jessica paused. From your younger sister, as family gossip. My sister, who'd sent me an expensive save-the-date card 2 months ago. Cream cardstock with gold foil lettering. A handwritten note about how much it would mean to have me there for her special day. The same sister who'd apparently been telling strangers I traded sex for career advancement. I called her that night. She picked up on the third ring. "Did you tell people at your book club that I slept with my boss to get promoted?" She laughed. Actually laughed. Light and airy like I'd made a joke. "Oh my God, Charlotte, you're so dramatic." "Answer the question." The laugh died. Her voice went flat and cold in a way that made my skin prickle. "You stole my marketing campaign idea 8 years ago and built your entire career on dismissing people. But sure, let's talk about me sharing some family gossip. 8 years ago, I'd been 44, she'd been 40. I developed a campaign for a major tech client over 6 months, documented every brainstorming session, every revision, every client meeting in my work notebooks. I had dates, timestamps, email chains showing the concept evolution weeks before I'd ever discussed marketing with her. I have documentation proving I developed that campaign independently. Dated notebooks, client correspondence, the timeline. You've always been the golden child who gets everything handed to her." Her voice rose. "Mom and Dad gave you $50,000 for your MBA 10 years ago. I got nothing, not $1. But you wouldn't know that because you've never had to struggle for anything. $50,000. I'd received it at 42. A gift that accelerated my career trajectory, let me get my MBA without crushing debt. I thanked them profusely. I'd assumed they'd done something equivalent for her. I genuinely believed we were treated equally. I'd been wrong about that for 10 years. I didn't know." She hung up. I sent 7 texts over the next hour demanding an explanation, asking how she could destroy my reputation, telling her this was my career, my livelihood, everything I'd built. She responded twice. Once to say I'd always made myself the victim. Once to say I was proving her point about being self-absorbed. Then she blocked my number. I sent 3 emails. Professional, measured, asking to resolve this like adults. She never responded. The next day, Mark called me to his office. An HR representative sat in the corner with a laptop and a notepad. 40 minutes of questions. When was I promoted? What was my relationship with Mark? Did I know the rumor's origins? Had I contacted my sister about this? The HR woman took notes and avoided eye contact while asking if I'd ever felt pressure to engage in inappropriate relationships for career advancement. I wanted them to see my face, to understand that sleeping with my boss to get ahead had never once crossed my mind because I'd spent 15 years earning this position through work that was documented in quarterly reviews and client testimonials and revenue reports. "I can prove the rumor originated from my sister," I said. "She started it. I have documentation." The HR woman nodded. "We still need to complete our investigation process to protect the company." Not to protect me. The company. I spent 3 days in a fog, trying to understand why my sister would do this. We'd had normal sibling tension, competition, sure, but this wasn't competition. This was destruction. 4 days after the HR meeting, my colleague David pulled me aside near the elevators. "I raised concerns 3 years ago," he said. "Someone called our client, told them you were unstable. We almost lost the account. $700,000 annually." I remembered. We'd saved the relationship, but it had been tense for months. I was traveling when this rumor broke, so I didn't hear about it right away. But when I learned it came from your sister, he looked uncomfortable. I suspected family involvement back then. I mentioned it to you. You said it was unlikely. I had said that. I dismissed it as paranoid. Because sisters don't destroy $700,000 contracts. Sisters don't weaponize family intimacy to torch your professional reputation. Except mine did. Over the following week, I searched through old emails with a systematic precision I hadn't applied since grad school. 4 instances over 6 years. Each one a professional opportunity that fell through or became complicated within days of my sister meeting someone in my network at family gatherings. A consulting project that evaporated. A speaking engagement that got canceled. A partnership that stalled. A client who became distant. I'd wondered about some of these, dismissed the thoughts as paranoid, because the alternative was too ugly to believe. The pattern had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. My parents called exactly 1 week after. The initial confrontation. "Your sister's very upset," Mom said. "Family is more important than pride, Charlotte." I explained what my sister had done. The rumor. The HR investigation. The potential damage to my career. Dad interrupted. "You always make everything bigger than it needs to be. Just forgive her. Move on. Always. Like this was a pattern I'd established. Like I was the problem. She told people I slept with my boss to get promoted. She nearly destroyed a $700,000 client relationship 3 years ago. This isn't small. She's going through a difficult time, Mom said. Wedding planning. The stress of potential fertility treatments after the wedding. You should be more understanding. Understanding of systematic professional sabotage presented as worried family concern. Your brother's been trying to stay neutral, Dad added, but he thinks you're both overreacting. Both. Like we'd each done something equivalent. Like her destruction and my documentation were 2 sides of the same coin. I genuinely assumed they'd helped both daughters equally. I'd never known she received nothing when I got $50,000 for my MBA. That explained the resentment, the bitterness, the years of comparison. But it didn't excuse 6 years of deliberate sabotage hidden behind a smile and expensive wedding invitations. My sister's resentment had specific roots I'd never known about. A financial disparity that created real wounds. A favoritism I'd been blind to. But that understanding didn't change the other truth crystallizing in my mind with brutal clarity. She hadn't just been angry. She'd been calculating, systematic. She targeted my career with precision across years, always framing it as family concern while dismantling my professional life piece by piece. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This was warfare I hadn't known I was in. My boss called me into his office the morning after I'd confronted my sister about the rumor. My name is Charlotte Wilson, and at 52 years old, I'd spent 3 decades building a career through documentation and strategy. I thought that would be enough to protect me. It wasn't. "Charlotte, I need to tell you something," Mark said, closing his office door. My boss was 56, salt and pepper hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of executive who'd survived 25 years in tech by being cautious. "Your sister called me yesterday." My stomach dropped. "She was very concerned about you," he continued. "Said she was worried about your mental state. Suggested work stress might be causing paranoia and erratic behavior." There it was. Not just spreading rumors anymore. Actively trying to get me fired. "Mark, I don't believe it," he said quickly, "but I needed you to know she's escalating." Escalating. The word felt too small for what was happening. My 48-year-old sister Caitlin wasn't just attacking my reputation anymore. She was systematically dismantling my career. 2 days later, HR called. Formal complaint filed. Screenshots attached. I stared at my angry text messages displayed on the HR director's tablet. Every frustrated attempt to reach Caitlin after she'd blocked my number. Every email demanding she stop spreading lies. All of it framed as harassment. Obsessive contact after being told to stop. She'd taken my legitimate attempts to defend myself and weaponized them. "We'll need another meeting," the HR director said. "Next Tuesday." I consulted an employment attorney that afternoon. Spent $1,200 for 90 minutes of advice that boiled down to document everything, don't engage, wait. This could be tortious interference, she said, reviewing the timeline. But pursuing legal action now might escalate things further. Let's see if HR resolves the immediate threat first. So I waited. And I hired a private investigator. $6,000 over 4 weeks. Every penny worth it. The PI discovered Caitlin had been systematically contacting people in my professional network for at least 6 years. Always the same script. Worried family concern. Always just enough truth mixed with lies to sound credible. 6 years. While I was clipping coupons and working overtime and believing we had normal sibling tension, the pattern had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. About 6 weeks after I discovered the book Club Rumor, an invitation arrived. Regional marketing conference 4 months out. Panel discussion on women in leadership. I accepted immediately. Started preparing. Told myself this was just professional development. But part of me knew I was building something Caitlin couldn't touch. I needed to understand how this happened. So I reached out to Emma, a childhood friend who'd known both of us growing up. We met for coffee at a place near her office. Her in her early 50s now, warm and direct in the way people are when they've already decided to tell you the truth. Your parents constantly compared you two, Emma said. Her latte sat untouched while she watched me process this. Every family gathering, your mom would talk about your latest promotion while Caitlin was right there struggling to get interviews. Your dad would bring up your grad school acceptance while she was dealing with her third job in 2 years. I thought those were just proud parent moments. Normal family conversation. They held you up like a trophy, Emma continued. And they did it in front of her, for years. The coffee shop noise faded. I was back at my parents' anniversary dinner 8 years ago, my mother asking about my VP track in front of the whole table, Caitlin excusing herself to the bathroom. I'd thought she was bored. She'd been drowning. There's something else, Emma said quietly. Caitlin was hospitalized for depression in her mid-20s. I stared at her. What? About 24 years ago. Your family told you she was on an extended work trip. Extended work trip, I remembered. 3 months where Caitlin was supposedly doing consulting in another city. I'd sent her emails about my new apartment, my promotion, my life, while she was in a hospital being treated for depression. They were ashamed, Emma said. Didn't want family drama. So they'd erased it, hidden her pain. Let me email her about my perfect life while she was falling apart. This information shook something fundamental in my understanding of our history, but it didn't excuse 6 years of professional sabotage. It didn't justify calling my boss to destroy my career. Pain explains behavior. It doesn't erase consequences. I went home and started documenting everything. Built a timeline with evidence, PI reports, dated screenshots, call logs, the works. Organized it all in detailed folders the way I'd been trained to do for decades. Then I did something different. I reached out to 4 younger women in my industry who'd previously asked for mentorship. Created a formal monthly program. First meeting in my company's conference room, coffee and pastries, honest conversation about navigating tech as women. The program gave me purpose beyond the conflict. These women were sharp and hungry and genuinely interested in learning. Not competition, not comparison, just connection. One of them, Sarah, shared her own experience of family sabotage over our 3rd meeting. Her brother had told their father she was too ambitious, too focused on career, not family-oriented enough. It cost her an inheritance she'd been counting on. I thought I was the only one, she said. She wasn't. None of us were. This pattern was everywhere. 5 weeks after I started the program, my company newsletter featured the mentorship initiative. 2 weeks later, a local business publication requested an interview about women supporting women in technology. The article ran with a photo of me and 3 mentees, professional, positive. Everything Caitlin sabotage tried to destroy. 3 months until the conference. Caitlin saw the coverage. She joined several professional women's networking groups on social media. Posted subtly about fake mentors who build careers on taking credit for others' work. About how some people use mentorship as reputation laundering. Then she connected with Sarah through a mutual friend and suggested coffee. Sarah called me immediately afterward. I need to tell you something. My chest tightened. Your sister reached out. We met for coffee this morning. Sarah's voice was steady, but I heard the uncertainty underneath. She said you have a pattern of using younger women to make yourself look good, that you're competitive behind closed doors, that you take credit. She was attacking the one positive thing I'd built. It made me question things, Sarah admitted. Just for a minute. Then I remembered everything you've actually done for me, and it didn't add up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to show Sarah every piece of evidence, every documented lie. Instead, I said, thank you for telling me. Because this was the sister I'd grown up with, the one who'd been compared unfavorably for decades, the one who'd been hospitalized while I was sending cheerful emails, the one our parents had failed spectacularly, but also the one who'd spent 6 years systematically trying to destroy my career rather than dealing with her own pain. Both things were true. Neither canceled the other out. About 2 months until the conference, HR called. The investigation had concluded. Full exoneration. My work history was impeccable. The rumor's documented origin was clear. The sister's harassment complaint was dismissed as retaliatory, given the evidence that she'd initiated the professional sabotage. Mark apologized in his office, door closed, genuine regret in his voice. I'm fast-tracking that initiative you proposed, he said. the one about expanding our mentorship model company-wide. Victory tasted complicated, I'd been cleared. But the fact that I needed clearing at all meant Caitlin had already won something. I prepared for the conference, reviewed my panel notes, connected with the other speakers, told myself this was the end of it. 10 days before the event, I received an email from the conference organization. Formal complaint filed. My sister alleging I'd been harassing and stalking her online. Screenshots of every email I'd sent trying to reach out and discuss the situation after she'd blocked me. All of it framed as obsessive contact after being told to stop. The organization was requesting I address these allegations before they could confirm my speaking engagement. I stared at the email, at the screenshots of my own words twisted into weapons. She'd found my professional platform and decided to take that too. Some absence is a choice, and some choices reveal everything. My sister filed a complaint with the conference organizers claiming I was harassing her professionally and needed to be removed from the speaking panel. That's how I found out she'd escalated. Not a phone call, not a family discussion, a formal complaint to the technology industry event where I was scheduled to speak about mentorship in 3 weeks. My name is Charlotte Wilson. I'm 52 years old, a vice president at a mid-sized tech consulting firm, and apparently the villain in my younger sister's increasingly desperate narrative. The conference coordinator's email was apologetic but firm. They needed to address the allegations before confirming my participation. Professional standards, duty of care, the usual corporate language that translates to, "We believe you're probably innocent, but we're covering our institutional ass." I sent them everything. The timeline, the private investigator's report, documentation of her calls to my boss, and the HR complaint. They apologized within 48 hours. The speaking engagement would proceed as planned. 3 weeks later, I delivered my panel discussion on building professional community to an audience of 200 women in technology. It went well. Better than well. The questions afterward were thoughtful and engaged, and several attendees asked about joining my mentorship program. During the networking reception, I saw Caitlin enter with 2 friends I didn't recognize. She was 48 but looked younger tonight, her light brown hair professionally styled, her dress expensive and fitted. She'd driven 2 hours to be here. That took planning, intention. I continued my conversation with an engineering director from Portland about scaling mentorship initiatives, watching my sister from my peripheral vision as she moved through the crowd. Her friends flanked her like backup singers. Moral support, witnesses. Whatever story she'd told them, they believed it. "Charlotte," Caitlin's voice cut through the networking murmur, loud enough to turn heads. "Can we finally talk about the marketing campaign you stole from me 8 years ago?" The room didn't go silent. That's movie logic, but the conversations around us definitely paused. Professional interest in drama is universal. I turned to face her. Caitlin's light blue eyes were bright with something between anger and desperation. Her friends watched me like I was the villain they'd been warned about. "I have documentation proving I developed that campaign independently," I said. My voice stayed level, calm. "The timeline shows your claim is false. I'm happy to share the evidence with anyone who asks." "You've always done this?" Caitlin's voice rose another notch. "Dismissed me. Taken credit for my work. Made me look like I'm crazy when This isn't the time or place." I turned back to the engineering director, whose expression had shifted from polite interest to visible discomfort. "Don't you dare walk away from me," Caitlin said behind me. But I did, because continuing that conversation meant giving her exactly what she wanted. A scene. Evidence of my instability. Proof that I was the problem. Several people from my panel had witnessed the exchange. I saw them watching, processing, drawing conclusions. My husband Timothy picked me up 40 minutes later. He's 54, practical and steady, in a way I've relied on for 21 years. He didn't ask how the panel went. He asked if I was okay. Caitlin showed up. I said, "Of course she did." We drove in silence for 15 minutes before he spoke again. "This is consuming you." Not an accusation, just observation. But I heard what he wasn't saying. "It's consuming us. She showed up at my professional event to accuse me publicly of stealing her work. And you have documentation proving otherwise. You've always had documentation." Timothy's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "But you're not defending yourself anymore. You're building a case. There's a difference." I wanted to argue, to explain that I had no choice, that Caitlin had made this necessary, but the words felt hollow, even unspoken. "After this is over," I said instead. "After the wedding. We'll move forward." Timothy nodded. He didn't ask me to promise. He didn't have to. The implication was clear enough. Our marriage couldn't survive this level of intensity indefinitely. I felt isolated in a way I hadn't since childhood. Not alone, Timothy was there. My colleagues supported me. My mentorship program was thriving. But isolated in the specific knowledge that my own family had become the threat I needed protection from. 3 days later, Caitlin called my largest client. I learned about it when my boss Mark called me into his office. Mark Sullivan is 56, composed and strategic in that way, senior executive's master after decades of managing crises. One of your accounts received a call, he said, from someone claiming to be your sister, suggesting that your recent erratic behavior and family drama make you unreliable for major projects. $700,000 annually. My biggest account. The portfolio I'd built over 8 years of meticulous relationship management and delivered results. The client mentioned it to me directly. Mark continued. They wanted to give us a heads up. They're not concerned, your work speaks for itself, but they thought we should know. My boss stood firmly by me. The client relationship was secure, but I sat in that office understanding with perfect clarity that my sister had just attempted to destroy my career. Not damage it, destroy it. That night, I called my attorney again, the one I'd consulted after the HR complaint, when this whole situation had first metastasized beyond family dysfunction into something legally actionable. This strengthens a potential restraining order case significantly, she said, and definitely supports a civil suit if you want to pursue 1. Document everything. This is part of an ongoing pattern of targeted harassment. 1 week after the client call, an expensive wedding invitation arrived. Cream-colored cardstock with embossed lettering. Formal and elegant. Inside, a handwritten note from Caitlin. I know things have been difficult between us, but I'm hoping we can put our differences aside for one special day. Family means everything. Love, Caitlin. I stared at that note for a long time. She just tried to destroy a $700,000 account, and now she wanted me at her wedding so she could play the gracious sister who'd risen above family conflict. Not attending would make me look petty. Attending and staying silent meant she controlled the family narrative completely. So I started strategizing. Over the next several weeks, I focused on my mentorship program, which had grown to 12 participants. I received an invitation to speak at a larger regional women in technology conference scheduled for early next year, 5 months away. Professional validation that felt both satisfying and somehow beside the point. And I noticed that one of the groom's cousins had commented on a LinkedIn post about my mentorship program. I responded professionally to thank him for the engagement. We exchanged a few messages about industry trends. He worked in business consulting with technology clients. Genuinely interesting perspective. Part of me was aware he'd be at the wedding. I told myself the connection was purely professional, but awareness and intention occupy uncomfortably adjacent territory sometimes. My conversations with Timothy during this period became longer, more honest. I showed him everything, the investigator's findings, the documentation of Caitlin's calls to my boss and client, the timeline of 6 years of systematic sabotage. He finally understood why I couldn't simply walk away. After the wedding, he said, you promised me. We find a way to move forward and not let this consume our entire lives. I promised. Caitlin weaponized the wedding planning like she weaponized everything else. Group family texts about details that forced me to either participate or look petty. Engagement photos posted with captions about surrounding herself with people who truly support her. Extended family told I'd refuse to be a bridesmaid because I couldn't handle not being the center of attention. My mother called weekly asking me to make peace. Each conversation the same script. Family is more important than pride. Your sister is stressed about the wedding. Why can't you just let it go? My mentorship program grew. My career advanced. And I spent an evening in my garage searching through old boxes for work files from 8 to 10 years ago. I found my notebooks from that period. Detailed project documentation that I'd kept out of habit, never imagining I'd need them as evidence. I sat on my garage floor surrounded by boxes and read every page from the time when Caitlin claimed I'd stolen her marketing campaign idea. The notes were comprehensive. 6 months of dated entries showing how I developed the campaign concept from initial client brief through multiple revision stages, meeting notes, strategy iterations, all in my own handwriting. All dated weeks before I'd ever discussed marketing strategy with my sister at a family dinner. I found similar documentation for the other 3 instances she'd mentioned. Every single accusation completely disproven by my own meticulous record-keeping. She'd been lying, not exaggerating, not misremembering, lying. There was no gray area, no shared blame, no moment where I'd taken her idea and run with it without credit. She'd fabricated the central accusation that justified 6 years of sabotage. I sat there holding notebooks that proved my sister had built an entire narrative of victimhood on nothing, and I thought about the $50,000 my parents had given me for my MBA 10 years ago, the investment that accelerated my career, the support Caitlin never received. That disparity didn't excuse 6 years of deliberate destruction. Financial inequality doesn't justify systematic lies, but it explained the shape of her rage. The wedding was in 2 days. I'd have documentation with me, proof, evidence that would shatter her story completely if anyone asked to see it. And I was finally ready to admit to myself, I hoped someone would ask. This wasn't defense anymore. This was the final confrontation. The moment where truth and lies would collide in front of everyone who mattered, where I'd have the opportunity to expose everything. Not cruelty, survival, though the line between those two things was getting harder to see with each passing day. My sister thanked everyone for showing up to support her during difficult times, standing at the reception microphone in her white dress, and I knew exactly which difficult person she meant. "It's wonderful when family shows up for you," she said, her voice catching with practiced emotion. "I've learned to surround myself with people who genuinely want me to be happy, unlike some people who see family as competition. My name is Charlotte Wilson. I'm 52 years old. And I spent the day before this wedding organizing documentation that would end my sister's marriage before it started. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 24 hours earlier, I sat at my kitchen table with my tablet, creating folders, timeline of sabotage, private investigators report, $6,000 over 4 weeks, screenshots of Caitlin's social media posts attacking me, evidence of calls to my boss, the conference complaint, and the most important piece, my original work notebooks, dated pages showing I'd developed that marketing campaign independently when I was 44, 6 months before I ever discussed marketing with her. She'd accused me of stealing her ideas. My notebooks proved she was lying, I told myself. I was just preparing to defend myself if confronted. I knew I was hoping for the opportunity to share the truth. The sister's escalation to threatening my client relationship, a $700,000 account, had eliminated every other option. Some lines don't get uncrossed. My husband Timothy and I arrived at the wedding the next afternoon. I wore a navy dress I'd chosen specifically to look professional and composed. We sat in the third row, not the back. The ceremony proceeded normally. Caitlin at 48 looked beautiful and nervous. The groom looked happy. I felt nothing. Then came dinner, then came her speech. Unlike some people who see family as competition. I stayed calm. I waited. I took a sip of water and set down my glass without my hand shaking even once. 40 minutes after dinner, the groom's cousin approached me near the bar with the groom's older brother, both men in their early 30s. The cousin had connected with me on LinkedIn 2 months ago. Professionally, I'd told myself, though I'd known he'd be here. "Charlotte, congratulations on the industry recognition," the cousin said. "We saw the article about your company's mentorship program." "Thank you." We noticed some tension during Caitlin's speech. The brother glanced toward where my sister stood with her new in-laws. "Is everything all right with the family?" I paused, looked at Timothy. He gave me the smallest nod. "I've been dealing with a difficult family situation," I said. "I can share context if you're interested." "We are." I pulled out my tablet. The timeline started with the book club rumor traced back to Caitlin 3 weeks before I discovered it. VP promotion earned by sleeping with my boss. The calls to my boss claiming I was mentally unstable. The false HR complaints with my angry texts framed as harassment. The attempts to poison my mentorship program by contacting my mentees. The complaint filed with the conference where I was speaking. The call to my largest client. Then I showed them my work notebooks, dated entries from when I was 44. Every page proving her central accusation was completely false. "This is just transparency about why there's tension," I said. "You can draw your own conclusions." Both men stared at the documentation. The brother's face went pale. The cousin kept scrolling, his jaw tight. "This is documented?" the brother asked. The private investigator confirmed the phone numbers. The clients confirmed the calls. The notebooks are dated and witnessed by my boss. I watched something shift in their expressions. Not anger, recognition. Like they'd suspected something was wrong but couldn't name it until now. "Jesus Christ," the cousin said quietly. I put the tablet away. They thanked me and walked toward the groom. 40 minutes later, I watched from across the room as the groom's mother pulled Caitlin aside near the bar. Even from a distance, I could see my sister's body language. Change. Her shoulders tensing, her hand going to her throat. The groom's brother showed him something on his phone. From across the room, I watched the groom's expression change as he looked at the screen. He glanced toward Caitlin, then back at his brother, his jaw tight. 20 minutes after that, Caitlin found me in a hallway outside the reception room. Her makeup was smudged. Her hands were shaking. You deliberately sabotaged my wedding day. I stayed calm. I told the truth when asked. You're trying to ruin my marriage before it even starts. I tried for months to resolve this privately. You chose warfare instead. She broke down, not the practiced tears from her speech. Real tears, ugly crying. My life is falling apart. The words came out in gasps. I'm a complete failure compared to you. Watching you excel at everything while I struggled, I felt desperate to tear down your perfect life. I felt a brief moment of sympathy. Brief. I know what I did was wrong, she said. But I felt invisible. Worthless. Pain doesn't excuse destruction, I said. You had many chances to stop. Charlotte, I wish things were different. I walked back to the reception. 30 minutes later, my parents intercepted me near the exit. My father, Joseph, at 76, looked furious. You deliberately caused a scene at your sister's wedding. You're vindictive and cruel, my mother added. She's 73 and her voice was shaking. You've always put your career above family. This proves you care more about being right than about Caitlin's happiness. I explained calmly what Caitlin had done. The systematic sabotage, the call to my client that could have destroyed a $700,000 account. I don't believe she would do that, my father said. You must have misunderstood or exaggerated what happened. Not, let me see the evidence. Not, are you sure? Just flat rejection. Even if some of it is true, my mother said, you chose the worst possible moment to air family problems. You humiliated her. I stared at them. These people who raised me, who I'd spent my whole life trying to earn equal approval from. They would always choose her because she needed them more, and I'd finally stopped needing them at all. I love you, I said, but I can't have a relationship with people who enable someone to systematically attack my career and reputation. Don't contact me unless you're willing to acknowledge what actually happened. Timothy and I left. Over the next week, I learned through a mutual friend that the marriage was in serious trouble. The groom's family had shared concerns about Caitlin's pattern of dishonesty. He'd moved in with his brother temporarily. My sister had been essentially ostracized by her new in-laws. Extended family members contacted me. Some were supportive. Others accused me of ruining Caitlin's life. I blocked the hostile ones. My brother Justin called. The parents are devastated. You need to apologize for what you did at the wedding. I'm willing to have a relationship with you if you're willing to hear the full truth, I said. But if you choose to stay willfully ignorant, I can't have you in my life. You're being unreasonable. I blocked his number. The mentorship program grew to 18 participants over the next month. I spoke at the Regional Women in Technology Conference. My presentation about supporting other women instead of competing with them was very well received. 2 other cities contacted me about expanding. A national women in technology organization and reached out about a leadership award. My company promoted me to senior vice president. $215,000 salary. 3 months after the wedding, I accepted the leadership award at a ceremony. During my speech, I talked about building professional community, the importance of supporting other women in male-dominated industries. 14 of my mentees attended. Afterward, I had dinner with 8 women from the program at a restaurant near the venue. They shared updates about professional victories and challenges. Real victories. Real challenges. No performance. No competition. This community of women who genuinely supported and challenged each other, this was the family I'd built by choice. Caitlin's sabotage had inadvertently forced me to find the belonging I was actually seeking. I learned through a former colleague that my sister had separated from her husband and filed for divorce 5 months after the wedding. She'd moved to a different city where her professional reputation was damaged. I consulted with my attorney one final time and decided that pursuing a restraining order or civil suit was unnecessary. The attacks had stopped. I felt complicated sadness for what could have been, mostly relief that it was over, gratitude for the life I'd built. I returned home from the ceremony to find Timothy had prepared a celebration dinner. As we ate together, I told him I was grateful he'd stayed patient with me through the difficult months. Our relationship grew stronger through this, I said. It did. I thought about my professional legacy, built on lifting other women up rather than being torn down by the one person who should have been my first ally. The community I'd created was worth more than the family approval I'd spent decades chasing. That's not a consolation prize. That's the better outcome. Some families are built by choice, and those are the ones that last.